Let's be frank with ourselves. Life is getting more hectic and demanding all the time. And we aren't getting any younger. It seems that there's only one way to cope: multitasking. A stupidly high amount of individuals all over the internet, known as gurus, life hackers, and clowns, are trying to convince you of that very fact. The idea behind it is that it increases the productivity and the efficiency of the individual. Even though thousands of unofficial and unqualified people support the idea, similar to flat earthers or moon truthers, it's still just a theory. Ironically, the whole concept can be compared to juggling balls, because juggling one ball or one task is relatively easy and simple for your brain to focus on. Two balls split your brain's focus, making one have more mistakes. And three or more balls is chaotic, and it's going to be a mess no matter how good one is initially. To truly debunk the false theory of multitasking, let's start off with one ball and talk about what is multitasking and what happens within our brain. Secondly, let's add our second ball and talk about how multitasking affects people in their daily lives. And lastly, as it becomes chaotic and as we add our third ball, let's discuss the major impacts of multitasking. Now then, as we throw our very first ball up into the air, let's ask the question: what is multitasking? According to journalist Kristen Rosen, the term was first used in the 1960s to describe computer performance. The human brain, however, is not a computer, and the definition changed with it over time. Today, multitasking is defined as the ability to do multiple things simultaneously by Cambridge Dictionary, and is typically used to describe human beings. Moreover, unlike computers, human attention is a very limited resource. The American Psychological Association, or APA, modeled visual attention like being like a flashlight. One can only show it in one direction at any given moment. Our primary focus, so what we're paying most attention to, is like the bright center of that flashlight. It can also be visualized like a camera lens. One can choose to narrow in their focus to concentrate on details, or narrow out to be aware of multiple things simultaneously. But zooming in and out at the exact same time is physically impossible. Even though in this context, multitasking should be impossible, but our brain still encourages the action. Nicholas Carr states, our brain itself encourages the action of multitasking because it craves information, even though in practicality, it's not that good at processing data at the speed or intensity we find ourselves today. This is partially due to the fact that our short-term working memory, or working memory for short, has a very small capacity. Working memory essentially is the context of one's consciousness at any given moment. What you're aware of right now, which is a handsome Indian dude giving you a speech, is part of your working memory. What you're not aware of, such as the new Netflix movie, is not part of your working memory. The whole concept can be compared to the 1960s book, The Magical Number 7. In that book, the author states that one's consciousness, or working memory, can only hold 7 pieces of information at any given moment, whether that be a 7-digit number or the names of 7 different people. When people take in too much information, such as studying last minute for an AP exam, what happens is information starts exiting and entering their brain at the exact same time. When someone's in this state, their brain doesn't have the function or capacity to do anything because it's preoccupied at processing all the new data being sent in. Now that we know why we multitask, let's add our second ball and talk about how multitasking affects us in our daily lives. According to those gurus that I mentioned earlier, multitasking can be categorized into 3 different ways that we use it in our daily lives. First is to do 2 tasks simultaneously. Second is to move back and forth from one task to another. And lastly is to do multiple tasks in rapid succession. Now, most people, including you and me, multitask in one of these forms every single day. Professor McFawn aptly states that most people multitask in their daily lives because they crave information, they want to be more productive, and FOMO. Wait, what's FOMO? FOMO is the fear of missing out. People fear in missing out in information, tweets, Instagram notifications, text messages, and emails. FOMO is also the reason why most people check their Instagram feed while they're on the toilet, or watch cute cat videos while they're in their college lectures. Because of this, we are constantly connected through digital distractions that we receive on our smartphones, smartwatches, and iPads. Now, being connected isn't inherently bad, it's just we fail to look at the consequences. One prime example would be attention span. As multitasking has been on the rise, attention span, however, has not. Elizabeth Musgrove states that the attention span of millennials has dropped to 8 seconds, while the attention span of Gen Z, my generation, has dropped to a measly 2.8 seconds. She states that the decrease in attention span is directly correlated with the increase of multitasking, whether that be through technology or other means. On top of all of this, my generation, Gen Z, spends at least 6 hours on the phone every single day. This causes us to have a sharp increase in multitasking compared to any other generation. Most of the time, when we're on our phone, it's during school or when we're at work. During both of these times, we have a sharp increase in FOMO, and we're essentially tired and bored. Now, I'm not trying to discredit people's way of life, because believe me or not, I spend at least 8 hours on my phone too. But what I am saying is when people multitask at work or at school to try to be more productive, the exact opposite happens in reality. Now then, as we near the end of our show, let's add our third ball and talk about how multitasking can truly be chaotic and what the major impacts it has. Up until now, we've been mainly focusing on the more goofy or fun aspects of multitasking. But we gotta keep in mind that multitasking has caused the death of millions. Multitasking at your home or at work is relatively fine and has very few harm, besides a slight decrease in productivity. But engaging in distractive actions behind a steering wheel not only puts the driver, but everyone else on the road at harm. The CDC states that roughly 9 people die every day because of inattentive driving. Meanwhile, another 1,000 people sustain an injury because they chose to take their eyes off the road. Even the most mundane action of talk to the passenger, listening to music, or daydream can be very distracting to a driver. Accidents happen in seconds, and the driver is expected to react instantaneously to stop the collision. The CDC states that 1,000 people die every year from multitasking, and another 100,000 people get injured because of inattentive car accidents. Meanwhile, another thousands of people die because of inattentive accidents related to skiing, scuba diving, cooking, and power tools. People think that they can multitask. They think that they can do 2 tasks at once, even though one of those tasks can take their lives. They believe that they can text and drive, or watch a movie while cooking. The problem of multitasking isn't that it decreases the productivity instead of increasing it, but it distracts the user. Now, as we hit the end of our show, we can see, looking back, that juggling was a perfect analogy for multitasking. Because juggling 1 ball is easy. 2 balls is hard. And 3 balls is chaotic. Thank you.